When they began their podcast in 2024, the Knots Landing cast promised stories that would make you feel good. In its place, one woman dropped a bomb. She said that from the start, her co-stars' looks made her feel threatened. Then someone admitted to a fight that got so bad that two players left the set together. Now that they had been friends for 40 years, it was finally over. The get-together in January 2025 was even worse, and now, after 40 years of keeping quiet, they're ready to tell everyone about each other. Knots Landing's story didn't start with cheers. It began with being turned down. David Jacobs had a dream in 1977. His goal was to create a show about regular people, their families, their relationships, and the problems that come with being middle class. He told CBS about this idea from the bottom of his heart, thinking they would like something so honest and personal. But no one on the network bit. It wasn't flashy enough, so they told him no. They wanted something more like a soap show, something bigger and more impressive. It wasn't like Jacobs left. He turned. They could ask for something fancy, and he would give it to them. That turned into Dallas. It first aired in 1978 and was full of money, oil, power battles, and cruel family drama. It was everything that CBS wanted, and it became a huge hit. But Jacobs didn't forget about the quiet show with real people. He had a plan for a long time. He had a plan. Jacobs planted a seed while he was building Dallas. He told Gary and Valine Ewing about each other. There were two people who didn't fit in with the high-stakes life in Texas. Gary was the middle son of the Ewing family. He was a drinker who never lived up to his brother's standards. Valine used to be his wife. She was nice and naive, but she was too busy playing power games to notice anyone else. On Dallas, they stood out like they didn't belong. But Jacobs had a different plan. There was never any doubt that these two were important. They were what would happen. While everyone else was busy, Jacobs was planning a quiet coup. The 1957 movie No Down Payment gave him ideas. That movie was about suburban couples who look perfect but are actually having a hard time. He also looked at parts of Ingmar Bergman's 1973 miniseries A Marriage, which is known for its deeply moving stories. Bergman had shown that Jacobs only wanted one pair. He wanted 4 of them. There are 4 families and 4 different marriages, but they are all real and linked. After that, everything changed. Dallas was only meant to have 5 episodes, but it became a huge hit. CBS all of a sudden saw that expanding the world could be useful. Jake knew it was his chance. He brought back the idea they had turned down before, but this time he was sneaky. It could grow from Dallas. Gary and Valine might be able to move to a different area. Oil companies or secrets in the suburbs could be the subject of the story. Yes, CBS said. The idea they had thrown out before now looked like a goldmine because it was linked to their biggest success. After many years, Jacobs remembered the irony. He said, "That's pretty good, but you know," and then he brought out the old Knots Landing pitch that they had turned down before. One manager even asked if there was a way to turn this into a spin-off. Yes was the answer. That was the start of Knots Landing. Not because they were successful right away, but because they were patient, persistent, and had great timing. It wasn't for big-name stars that the people who made Knots Landing started casting. It was important that the people they hired looked and felt like regular Americans. People who were dealing with normal problems in unique ways. It wasn't Dallas, where there are oil barons and fancy farms. The street was meant to be full of middle-class families. Barbara Miller was in charge of casting, and from the start, it was clear that reality was more important than flash. Ted Shackelford played Gary Ewing in the end. He wasn't the first Gary, though. It was David Aykroyd who played that part for the first time on Dallas. When it was time to make a spin-off of Knots Landing, Aykroyd couldn't do it. He already had other plans, so Shackelford stepped in. However, things didn't go smoothly with his casting behind the scenes. They had just worked together on Wonder Woman with Joan Van Ark, who played Valine. She didn't want to do it once more. After many years, she admitted on a show, "Oh my God, no, we're way too much alike. It's not a good match." She told the show's producer David Jacobs that right away. He was still cast though. Van Ark didn't learn until the first table read. They were sitting right next to each other. She was angry at first. But she later said that the way they naturally got along was one of the best things about the show. The rest of the original group was also picked with great care. The part of Karen Fairgate was given to Michelle Lee. It was her voice of reason that made everyone in the neighborhood feel good. Sid, her husband, was played by Don Murray. He was a good man who ran a neighborhood car dealership. Then there was John Plachette as Richard Avery, a lawyer who drinks too much, and Constance McCashin as Laura, his wife, who is trying to keep their marriage together. Their roles as Kenny and Ginger Ward were chosen to show the younger side of suburban life. They were young in love, and still getting used to being married. This mix of names wasn't a mistake. The people who made it wanted to show all kinds of suburban couples, from the idealistic ones to the ones who are on the edge. It was supposed to feel comfortable and real, whether it was a new relationship or a marriage that had been going for a long time. But there was still something missing. That something showed up in season 2. When Donna Mills came on as Abby Cunningham, everything changed. She played the sister of Sid Fairgate, a woman who had just gotten separated and had 2 kids. After moving into the cul-de-sac, the show's mood changed as soon as she walked on screen. Abby wasn't nice or kind to others. She did some math. She wanted money, power and charge. She didn't care who got hurt on the way. Choosing to hire Mills was a smart move. Someone had to make trouble for the writers. In fact, she did just that. After many years, Mills laughed about how little she knew before she went. "I had never seen the show before I got it. I thought it was an Andy Griffith show about a houseboat." However, Abby quickly became one of the most well-known figures. Abby tore her family apart to get what she wanted, while other people tried to make theirs better. That's why the choice for Knots Landing was so great. There was something different about each talent. Some brought happiness, some brought trouble, and some brought chaos. But when they worked together, they turned a quiet street in the suburbs into one of the craziest stories on TV. The first quiet day at Knots Landing was December 27, 1979. It came with low hopes and not much buzz. It wasn't a good time. Many people weren't even watching TV because it was the holiday season. Not a lot of people watched the first season. It only had 13 shows. It got an average of 7.4 Nielsen ratings. That made it look like just another show that might go away without a fuss. But reviewers saw something unique. They liked how real the show seemed. It wasn't trying to be like Dallas, which has big houses and a lot of drama. Knots Landing, on the other hand, was about everyday situations like marriages breaking up and neighbors keeping secrets. It stood out because it was honest. Even though not many people saw it, critics liked how it showed real suburban life and had complex personalities. In any case, CBS was worried about the low numbers. They thought a Dallas version would be better. It wasn't clear at first if they should keep going with the show, but good reviews and a growing group of dedicated fans helped save it. That's why CBS chose to try it again. Everything changed after the second season. When Donna Mills came on as Abby Cunningham, things really took off. The score went up to 8.1. Mills wasn't just a new person, she made the whole tone different. Abby was beautiful, smart, and cruel. She wasn't afraid to trick, lie, or charm people to get what she wanted. The drama felt sharper, darker, and more addicting all of a sudden. When Abby came, it set off a chain of powerful stories. No one could take their eyes off of it. The end of season 2 sealed the deal. People were really interested when Sid Fairgate's car went off a cliff. The show wasn't afraid to try new things. From season 3 to season 7, things were great. Rates kept going up, and in season 6 from 1984 to 1985, the show got a 10.3 rating, which was its best ever. That was it. Knots Landing had finally found its groove. The writers got the right mix of real-life problems and soap opera-style turns. Killings, business fights, relationships kept secret, and family secrets kept for a long time happened. But everything still felt real. The scenes that left you hanging were the best parts. At the end of each season, there was a big surprise that made fans eager to see what happened next. The tension was hard to put down. Every week people watched without fail. During this peak, Knots Landing did more than just stay alive. It was the most popular show in its time spot and one of the best dramas on TV. While it was on for 14 years, the show got an average rating of 17.2 and kept 29% of its viewers. It wasn't as big as Dallas, but it didn't have to be. It had something just as valuable in it. A steady group of loyal fans who stuck around. Because of this, the show was always a hit for CBS and marketers loved it. But there was more and more competition. By the end of the 1980s, new shows like LA Law and Primetime Live began to lose viewers. There were more choices for people, and TV was changing quickly. Another show might not have made it through that change. The landing at Knot, however, was steady. The core audience stuck with it even when the cast changed and the story went in new ways. People believed that the show would keep providing. That dedication turned out to be its best quality. There was stress building behind the scenes of Knots Landing that most fans never knew about. Even though there was drama on the show, There was real fighting going on behind the scenes. It began early on between two of the show's biggest stars, Dawn Mills and Michelle Lee. Today the two actresses talk about it freely on their podcast, We're Not Done Yet. But back then, things were not friendly. Mills's first few months on the show were so tense that it almost blew up during a scene they were shooting with co-star Ted Shackelford. What's wrong? Michelle Lee says she thought like a director and often tried to be in charge by telling her co-stars what to do without their permission. Dawn Mills wouldn't have it though. She wasn't going to be pushed around. Mills and Shackelford looked at Lee during that tense moment, and then got up and left the set quietly. Lee was shocked. I suddenly didn't know what I did wrong. Of course I never do. She remembered that you and Ted looked at her and then left the set. I asked myself, holy skull, what just happened? Donna didn't try to hide her answer. Afterward, she told Lee, don't push me around. Tell me what you want, but don't push me. You can't treat me that way. That argument wasn't just about power or pride. More than that, it came from deep down. Michelle Lee later said that Donna's beauty and personality made her feel threatened. She said those thoughts went all the way back to when she was a child. She told me I was one of the biggest girls in school. I didn't feel like I fit in. Now Donna Mills comes along. The thought that came to mind was that she's the famous one. That person will be well liked. I have no idea how I will get through this. Lee decided to be honest instead of letting that event ruin their work relationship. To tell Mills how she really felt, she picked up the phone and called her. And to their surprise, being honest brought them closer. As the 1990s came around, more and more troubles started to happen behind the scenes. It wasn't just bumpy, everything was a mess. I think season 13 was the worst of the bunch. In the end, creator David Jacobs didn't hold back when he said it was an airplane crash. Also, he said that it's never just one thing. There was a lot of chaos going on at once. When things got really bad, Jacobs did something that you almost never see on TV. He stopped everything that was being made. 3 writer-producers were fired right away. The plots were thrown out and redone from scratch. It was a huge change that showed how determined the team was to save the show. At the same time, it was harder than ever to get the group together. By the end of the show's run, many of the stars had contracts that only let them be in a few episodes a year. This broke up the show's flow. Fans liked Kevin Dobson and William Devane, but they would sometimes not show up for a few episodes in a row. The cracks were even more visible without them. Then there was the drama with Joan Van Ark. She had been in the show from the start and was an important part of it. But in 1990, she said she was going. She said it was about how she was getting better as an artist. To use her own words, she said that security in Los Angeles is like a kidney-shaped pool where you wait for payment. It's not good for artists to be at ease. It was clear that she wanted more than just security. Things went in a strange direction though. Van Ark changed her mind after all the excitement leading up to her departure. She made the choice to stay for 2 more years. This made everything hard to understand. Producers had already planned how she would leave, so now they had to change their minds. Fans were also not sure what to do. It felt like something important had been taken away when she finally left in 1992. The show had lost one of the things that made it moving. It was now time for egos to fight everywhere. It wasn't just stress in the work, it was about them. Members of the cast have said that there were resentments and jealousies that went beyond the normal stress of making a long-running show. Those old wounds were briefly opened again in the 2005 reunion show. Van Ark joked that people probably watched just to see if the actors were using wheelchairs or walkers. It didn't land right. Someone on the set, who she didn't name, told her to cut the line and reshoot the scene. The response was sharp and quick. That one joke made me feel something. Things like getting old, vanity and image were now touchy. And that moment showed how bad those feelings were even though the cameras had stopped rolling years before. There was a time when how people looked was just as important as how they spoke. Beauty and hair were big parts of the show, said Lisa Hartman, who played both CG and Kathy. It was more than just a habit. Ted Shackelford said that they would waste half a day just getting ready. Joan Van Ark always did that to look good. Hartman saw her with a mascara stick in her hand while she was driving through Beverly Hills. The crew made fun of her name by calling her Mona, which was a small hand mirror with the Mona Lisa on the back. It wasn't just makeup either. A lot of talk was going on about plastic surgery. Steven Zacks, one of the best plastic doctors in Los Angeles, was Michelle Phillips' boyfriend for 6 years. She was sure that people who went to the gathering in 2005 would have had facelifts. But she looked around and said there were no scars. Kevin Dobson joked that it was a good thing that no one on the show had facial surgery. Not today anyhow. On TV, love scenes looked hot, but it was anything but easy to film them. What Donna Mills said made her laugh. Yes, that does look very hot and sexy. It's not that hot and sexy when you do it. Even though it seems mild now, the show really pushed the edges of what was possible on TV in the early 1980s. They were already telling stories about rape, murder, drug trafficking, and kidnapping in 1982. It wasn't just a story twist. Even network censors were surprised by how sharp and grown-up they were delivered. Behind the scenes though, real life didn't stop. Over the years, the group lost many loved ones. Laura Park Lincoln, who played the smart Linda Fairgate, died at the age of 63. In the show, her boyfriend killed her in 1991. But when she died, it hurt her co-stars a lot. And everyone in the cast was shocked when Kevin Dobson died in September 2020. For more than 10 years he played Mac McKenzie. Once a month, the group got together virtually for a reunion that turned into a touching tribute to him. Everyone had a story. Everybody was crying. There were also stories that were never shown. A few months ago, Joan Van Ark, Michelle Lee and Donna Mills talked about stories they flat out refused to do. They didn't say everything, but the message was clear. Some stories went too far, even for a soap opera on prime time. It was known that the writers of Knots Landing walked the line, but now we know that sometimes they went too far. When they did, the players didn't back down. Part of what made Knots Landing so interesting for so long was the tension between crazy stories and real-life pushback. It was 2024 and Knots Landing fans were thrilled when Joan Van Ark, Michelle Lee and Donna Mills told everyone about their new show. We're Not Done Yet was the name of it. Everyone was looking forward to funny stories, warm memories, and laughing. There was something else they got instead though. Things didn't seem right from the very first show. The women chose to tell the truth instead of being nice and acting like they had been friends for a long time. And the truth was a lot messier than anyone thought it would be. The mood changed as soon as they talked about their early days on the show. They didn't lie about anything. As real feelings took over, the friendly smiles went away. They both said it wasn't always easy to work together. Hidden behind the scenes were feelings of competition, jealousy, and hurt. Don't know if you remember, but the first few months I was on the show, we had a little dust-up, Donna Mills told Michelle Lee. That was the most tense moment. Remember? Lee thought for a moment, and then said that she remembered. But she said it was a fight. It was clear after that one word. The fight had been hidden for decades, but they were finally talking about it. What came next was honest and sad. Michelle Lee said that Mills had made her feel scared, not because of how talented she was, but because of how pretty she was. It wasn't because you were playing, she said, it was because she thought you were so beautiful. Even old fans were shocked by how honest they were. It wasn't a planned event. It was true. Her voice let you know. Ted Shackelford's name came up next, which fans hadn't thought would be a part of the action. He wasn't just a supporting actor, he had been right in the middle of the first fight. Back in the beginning, Michelle Lee went too far while directing a fight. Donna Mills didn't like it, and Ted Shackelford agreed with her. They left the set together. At that moment it became clear how bad the stress had been. Having Shackelford take a side made the disagreement feel even worse. That wasn't the only surprise about Shackelford though. Joan Van Ark told a shocking secret. She had tried to stop him from being cast in the first place. Her reason, she said we were too much alike. Just that one line made me want to ask more. How many other choices made behind the scenes were based on one's own emotions? How many casting choices were made with differences that were kept quiet? The show turned into a spotlight on years of quiet anger instead of a happy look back. It wasn't supposed to happen that way, but things became more real as they talked. Fans did more than just listen to stories. They saw decades of tension finally come to a head, but not everything seemed to be fixed. The Hollywood show gathering in January 2025 was meant to be a party. For years, fans had been waiting to see their favorite group back together. The event in Burbank promised memories, laughs, and a sneak peek at their new podcast. What they really got, though, was something much worse. Things didn't feel right from the start. People who went said it was a tense environment. Not happy like those in the past. There was something in the air that kept the truth from getting through the smiles. It wasn't a good time either. There were wildfires in Los Angeles at the time, and some group members weren't even sure they could make it. People couldn't ignore the storm that was caused by the stress of the natural disaster and their own problems. All of that was covering up a story that was easy to see. Actresses like Van Ark, Lee, and Mills talked about each other with love for years. They talked about their friendship, dedication, and a bond that had been there for decades. Fans were sure of it, why wouldn't they? But that picture is now breaking. Mills said something that made everyone stop and think. It didn't start out that way, but it looks like it did. Fans thought they knew everything until that one line changed it. It was more than just a fight over fame. It never turned out the way it seemed at first. People were told that the bonds were an important part of the show, but things were really messy behind closed doors. And the way the group is dealing with it makes things even more tense. Lee and Mills are honest about the fights they've had in the past, but their tone can sound protective at times. Lee said that her bossy behavior was because she had the mind of a director. Some people thought that was more of an excuse than an apology. She seemed to want people to see her not as hard to deal with, but as someone who was hard to understand. Knots Landing wasn't just fun though. It was the end of TV for good. It turned the idea of what a story could be on its head. It gave viewers something deeper instead of stories that began and finished in one episode. It had stories that went on for months or even years. To figure out what was going on, you had to keep looking. And a lot of them did. Modern dramas are based on the idea of following people over time and seeing them grow, make mistakes and change. Today's shows still follow the road that Knots Landing helped make. Alana Levine, professor, said it best. She said that these kinds of shows were really important to the economy of all American TV. She thought they were a big part of making TV what it is today. Knots Landing paved the way for everything from Game of Thrones to reality TV by focusing on long-running characters and plots. That effect is still felt on the screen today. It changed the types of stories that were being told too. Knots Landing wasn't about rich families living in castles or billionaires on boats. It was about families from the suburbs. Some of these people looked like they lived next door to you, but their lives were hidden, betrayed, and hard behind closed doors. It was known for that mix between the normal and the shocking. People kept coming back because they could relate to those people. That effect didn't end in the 1980s. There is a lot of credit to Knots Landing for shows like Desperate Housewives, Big Little Lies, and even younger ones that mix scary stories with family drama. The show showed that seasons could be built around middle-class families with problems that people could relate to. It wasn't about being beautiful, it was about the truth of how you feel. It worked. Critics also saw it. Even when Knots Landing didn't win every award, it was still thought of highly. It was nominated for several Emmys. In 1987, William Devane was up for a Golden Globe for Best Actor in a Drama TV Series. But the show did more than just win awards. It also helped improve the picture of soap operas. It proved that soap didn't have to be weak or cheap. It was smart writing. The figures had many levels. Slowly the business world started to take evening soaps more seriously. It was a remarkable run. Knots Landing had 344 shows over 14 seasons at the end of its run in 1993. In terms of how long they ran, only Gunsmoke and Bonanza had been on longer. There's more to that than luck. That's staying power. It even lasted longer than its more well-known parent show, Dallas and peers like Falcon Crest and Dynasty. What is the most amazing thing? It didn't start out with a lot of viewers. It got more people to watch over time. Networks learned a very important lesson from that. There was no need for shows to always go off the rails right away. People would watch it over and over if it was good. They did it. Knots Landing is back now that we can watch it. It's easy for new people to find the show thanks to services like Prime Video and Plex TV. That has brought in a lot of new fans. Joan Van Ark, who was one of the first stars, talked about this. "I think it's kind of late to the party," she said. "I think we deserve attention and it should have been sooner. We'll take it at any time though. This is a second chance for a show that should have always gotten more praise." That might be the real impact. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't always in the news, but it always had great stories. In the end, it kept making real emotional links. And because of that, Knots Landing became one of the most important shows in the history of TV. People don't always notice that its marks are all over the place.